Power. Thank you for joining us. We have a quorum now, and we will get started. And I believe that we will get started with the oath of office for any that have not taken the oath. You need our hands raised for anybody that hasn't taken the oath. Two of us. Okay.
Stand and raise your right hand.
I, Gary Peterson,
solemnly swear
that
I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States,
support and defend the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
Will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
obligation freely without any mental reservation,
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
discharge the duties on which I am about to enter. There we go.
At the end of the meeting, you can just come and sign.
So we'll go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and perhaps Dr. Baumann could lead us. Thank you. Republic for which it stands, visible, with liberty. Thank you. If we could have the roll call, please.
Mr. Palacios? Mr. Bernal?
Scott Collins here for Mr. Bernal.
Mr. Montoya?
Here.
Mr. Goldstein? Here. Mr. Baumann?
Here.
Mr. Corpus?
Gary Peterson here for Mr. Corpus.
Mr. McCarthy?
Here.
Mr. Harvey? Mr. Long?
Mr. Agater here for Mr. Long.
Mr. Espinoza? Chair Mendez?
Michael McCadden here for Chairman Mendez.
So I believe, and I'll ask the clerk this, but I believe we need a motion to approve the interim chair. It's on the, looking at an agenda that's got that.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so I'm looking at two different agendas, one that was published and one in my notebook, and I assume I follow the one in the notebook.
The one that
That's the old
you
one.
should have is for August 2nd.
Got it. Just, thank
Okay.
you. All right, so we will now have oral communications from the public for items that are not on the agenda. If you would step to the microphone.
Morning, everybody. My name is John Martinez. I'm from Gonzales, California. Then as a taxpayer, I just wanted to talk to you guys about, or ask you, in terms of the procedural part of voicing our concerns regarding your direction and policies and that. How does a typical person in the street get to talk to you folks? What is the protocol, if there's any? And is there a public right to know in terms of scheduling that we can Google or anything like that might pop up on the internet that we can look at as community? And how do we relate our ideas with you and share what we think would be appropriate?
Tells this guy about, you know.
How's that?
Mike's back up.
Okay.
All right, I think we're back on, and I see that the public comment is being addressed by staff. Very good. Thank you. We will now move to the consent agenda. We have two items on the consent agenda, the minutes from the Operations Board meeting and the approval of the regular meeting schedule of the Operations Board. And we need to approve those. I'll look for a motion for approval on those. Oh, yes, sorry. Public comment on the consent items? Okay, now I'll look for a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
I'll have to abstain.
Yeah, I was considering that while I wasn't here for the meeting, so likely. Right. So we'll move into the regular agenda, and our first item is the Monterey Bay Community Power Administrative and Organizational Updates. That's a discussion item, and I believe will be presented by Sean Marshall. Sean?
Good morning, Board. Good to see you all. Okay, so what I'm going to do is basically just recap where we are with a number of items with respect to organizational development and administrative items related to startup. And the first is our very favorite topic related to banking and credit services. And once again, I'm going to start with just a thank you, because things continue to move along expeditiously and in the right direction. So the updates since we last met earlier in July are that consolidated comments on the loan agreement were submitted back to River City Bank on the 21st of July. Those have been reviewed, and with all, good outcomes. I think the important element to point out today is that in the ensuing time frame, and as Tom has come on board, there has been discussion about combining the revolving line of credit, which right now, as you know, is contemplated at $3 million for the startup, with the non-revolving line of credit, which is the amount of working capital at $10 million that will be needed for power supply and early agency operations. This is the approach that was taken in Silicon Valley Clean Energy. Tom is well familiar with the terms. We've had preliminary conversations with River City Bank about getting this package put together as a combined loan in a way that would not change the credit guarantee requirements that have already been hammered out. That's very important, and would not change the repayment terms and agreements, especially for this initial non-revolving line of credit. So conversations continue with that. It's not all figured out as yet, but there is precedent for this, and the idea would be to bring the entire package to the policy board at its meeting on September 13th and get both done at the same time and be done with this, which we think would be smart and expeditious as long as everything can be worked out. So none of the credit guarantee issues or anything have changed since we last met in July. On page 3 of your report, you'll just see that there's a quick update from each of the counties as to the status of their credit guarantee and their interagency agreement. Glad to report that Santa Cruz County and all their cities are completely done now. So thank you for that. Monterey County and cities are about halfway done, with everybody else lined up to approve their interagency agreements through the month of August. And unfortunately, Ray Espinoza is not here today from San Benito County, so I don't have an update on their interagency agreements. However, what's material for today is that we all know that San Benito County will be providing $545,000 in cash collateral for the guarantee to the bank, and that really is the critical component to get all of the paperwork and everything moving forward. So hopefully they are working with Hollister and San Juan Bautista, and everything is in good shape there. So There are a number of next steps. We continue to work with River City Bank. Tom is on board and engaged in this conversation, and everything is on track to bring a full package back to the policy board at its meeting on September 13th. Are there any questions about that before I move on? Okay, super, thank you. I also want to I should acknowledge Peter Detlefs, Carol, the county counsel's office, and others who've also been shepherding this along. So thank you, Peter, for that. All right, so next is agency insurance. And just to let you know that the county's risk management staff is right now engaged in procuring errors and omissions insurance as is articulated in the JPA agreement. So that is underway. Do not have the policy yet for you, but we will have that at your next meeting. We have also reached out to a couple of private insurers to start checking into affordable policies for general liability insurance, perhaps directors and officers, although that may not be necessary given the coverages you already have with your municipalities. And then, of course, there will be workman's comp insurance, especially as soon as Tom comes on board and as we have staff put in place. So those policies we hope to have completely in place and ready to go for the board's review at its September meeting. Questions about that? All right, moving right along. Next is preparations for the interim CEO. Good news is Tom's super flexible, so he's practically already started with us on an interim basis. So as you know, on July 12th, the policy board approved his employment contract that has subsequently been signed. At the moment, we are working, the county staff is working to find office space for Tom that would commence sometime in early September because his official start date is September 1. And so I'll be right with you. And then also procurement of a laptop, and then just beginning to kind of build out some of the basic equipment that will be needed for Tom. And then as the staff begins to expand through the fall and the beginning of next year, there will be probably office space and a number of other things that will begin to build around that. But for now, just to know that the contract has been signed with him, and we are working on these other steps in order to have a nice welcome on September 1st. Yes, sir. Did you have a question?
Sean, I know it was mentioned at the policy board that the city has office space downstairs that's fully finished and downstairs and vacant, approaching at Main Street.
Great. Good to know. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions about the interim CEO? Tom, anything you want to add since this is all about you? Okay, super. All right. Should acknowledge Ajita Patel from the County of Santa Cruz has been shepherding this effort as well. I think Ajita's here. Okay, so last but not least, it's not on this memo here, but at a request from Carol to please remind you all that the economic interest lovely Form 700, our favorite, only 2 of those have been received. And so we would like just a friendly reminder to please get that filled out and submitted to Carol as soon as possible. So that's going to conclude my remarks. Is there anything else? Carol, is there anything else? Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Going to take public comment?
So, any comments from the public? Yeah.
Yes, I'd like to thank City of Watsonville for offering space. That's great. I would also consider Salinas as well. Keep options open on that because coming in from South County, King City and that down that way in the Salinas Valley, it's quite a haul down here. So if you centralize it, it'd be great. Thank you very much.
Other comments? Closed. Final comments from the board. All right, we'll move to the next item. Is, somewhere I have my other agenda. It's the next item. Operations and Board of Directors. And discussion of the implementation plan, and I believe that will be presented by Thank you.
Good morning. My name is John DeLessie, and I am with Pacific Energy Advisors. Also introduce Kirby DeSell, my colleague at Pacific Energy Advisors. We specialize in community choice energy programs and have helped successfully launch several that are operating today in California and serving over 1 million customers. So really happy and excited to be working with you. We've been working with your, I guess, soon-to-be CEO, Tom Habashi, on developing a draft implementation plan for the Monterey Bay Community Power Program. And I'm here to present a summary of the draft and take input and answer any questions that you might have. So an implementation plan it's first and foremost a statutory requirement that needs to be in place before you're able to start serving retail customers. And you can think of it as a form of a business plan where you essentially describe how the program will be organized, operated, and funded. And it also, by statute, has to include certain elements that are called out, and that ultimately, when the plan is adopted by the governing board here, it would be submitted to the California Public Utilities Commission, and they will go through a process of certification. But through that process, they check to make sure that each of those statutorily required elements have been addressed. And those requirements are listed on this table here. And this is a very convenient, I think, and handy cross-reference of the legal requirements and where they can be found and how they are addressed in the implementation plan. This table is included in the plan itself, which really facilitates the certification process. But you can see that the requirements listed here are that a statement of intent, a description of the process and consequences of aggregation, the organizational structure of the program, its operations and funding, rate setting and other cost to participants, disclosure and due process in setting rates and allocating costs among customers. Those provisions need to be described as part of the sort of consumer protection role that the CPUC plays. Methods for entering and terminating agreements with other entities, general participant rights and responsibilities, a description of third parties that will be supplying electricity under the program, including information about their financial, technical, and operational capabilities. And finally, a description of the process by which the program would be terminated if that were to come to pass. The draft plan describes the current membership of the Joint Powers Authority. So, of course, that would be the 3 counties and the 16 cities that have signed on. I'll note here that the implementation plan, it's primarily, as I said, a regulatory document that's required before you start serving customers. It doesn't necessarily need to be updated and recertified over time. It's not a living document in that sense. The only exception to that is if the membership in the JPA were to change. So if additional cities were to join, or if the city were to leave the JPA, if that's allowed by the agreement, then the plan would need to be resubmitted to the CPUC and recertified. But other than that, it does not need to be updated. The plan describes the organizational structure that has been adopted here with the 2 governing boards, and broadly describes the organizational structure of the key functions that are required to operate a CCA program. One of the themes when we develop the implementation plans is to provide enough information but not be overly prescriptive, because this is really a general plan. And there will be much more detailed programs developed, staffing plans developed, and we don't want this plan to really constrain what can be done. So it's fairly high level, but does allow for that flexibility. One of the really, I think, important decisions leading up to the plan is what, if any, customer phase-in plan is contemplated. So, and when the program intends to start serving customers. And working with Tom, the draft proposal here is to have a two-phase implementation beginning in March of 2018, and that would consist of all of the non-residential accounts. So that would be all the commercial, the industrial, the agricultural, the street lighting municipal accounts, everybody except the residential class. And then the second phase would be shortly thereafter in July, and then that would simply be all the residential customers. So relatively straightforward phase-in plan, and you'd be at full scale by the end of July. As part of the work that we've been doing with the implementation plan, we've updated the financial pro forma and the load analysis, and that's been reflected also in the financial section of the plan. And the startup and working capital requirements are still estimated at about $13 million. And again, the plan is fairly general, but it describes how net revenues will be used for either operating reserves, local programs, or cash rebates. In terms of the service options, Trevor, do you want to describe the planned service options here?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm Kirby Dussel with Pacific Energy Advisors, and in terms of the service options that are contemplated in the implementation plan, there are currently two. One option, which would be characterized as the default option, meaning the option in which all customers would be enrolled unless they voluntarily elected to participate in the option I'll describe in just a second, is going to be an option that includes a quantity of renewable energy that will meet or exceed statewide mandates. I think the goal is to exceed statewide mandates, but again, in the name of flexibility and making sure that there is a certain level of flexibility preserved in the implementation plan, that hasn't been spec'd out exactly just yet. So there'll be additional discussion. You all will be able to look at where wholesale market prices are and how that might affect customer rates before you decide ultimately on what that resource mix would be in that default service option. But the idea is between the use of renewable energy and carbon-free energy that you would be able to affect greenhouse gas reductions relative to the incumbent utility, PG&E. And how that all happens is really up to you to decide. So I think that's kind of the way it's spec'd out right now, is allowing for that flexibility, allowing for that discussion to unfold. And then the second option, a voluntary option, which would be provided to customers at a modest cost premium, would provide 100% carbon-free electricity through the use of renewable energy and other carbon-free sources. And I think the goal there is really to focus more than anything on renewable energy options that would be all California-based. And so, again, that it would be a voluntary option for customers that are really interested in driving down their GHG emissions profile in the electric sector to the lowest possible levels, and again, would also come at a price premium. So those are the two different service options that are formally contemplated in the implementation plan presently. Of course, you could put other options into place over time, as some of the other community choice energy programs have chosen to do. And then in terms of complementary energy programs, this is really an area that's been, I think, of keen interest to the operating community choice energy programs out there. And in particular, complementary energy programs are really focusing on things like energy efficiency and demand reduction. And then other customer-focused programs that might be applying rebates for photovoltaic solar installation and the like. Of course, these programs are items and interests that will be addressed eventually as time and financial resources and staffing capabilities permit. So these are kind of discussed at a very high level in the plan, but there are really no details presently as to what those specific programs might entail. So again, in the interest of preserving flexibility, that's the way these items are characterized in the document presently. And I think one more comment on this. as these programs are teed up for discussion, and Tom and staff, and of course the governance of this particular organization is involved, I think you'll be in a position at that point in time to be able to spec out in terms of a business plan what those programs look like, more specifically what the rates and costs and staffing needs will be in order to really build out what that's going to look like going forward. And then in terms of power procurement, John mentioned that this is an area that needs to be described as spec'd out in the Public Utilities Code, how it is that you're going to source the electric energy requirements of your customers. And so there's a plan for that that's described briefly in the document. And you can see here the schedule that's contemplated. And it is going to get started pretty quickly. So as soon as just a month or so from now, we're going to go out with a competitive solicitation process, recruit interest from the energy supply community, if you will, and begin receiving offers for the supply that would be needed in order to serve MVCP customers. Of course, that would also include negotiation of related power supply agreements and the like, so that we can make sure that that supply is going to be online and delivered in consideration of the phase-in schedule that's contemplated. And those are really the key elements of the implementation plan as currently drafted. I think if some of or all of you were at last month's joint board meeting, some of these items were touched on, so hopefully there's a little bit of familiarity with these topics as they've been raised today, but also a little bit more specificity with regard to how they're addressed in the current document. Be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you for that presentation. In regard to procurement, can you just describe, I would assume that obviously we would have to negotiate power purchase agreements to supply power for the immediate needs, but to support energy development in the Tri-County area, there's obviously a significant 2 to 5 year lead time. So how do those power purchase agreements get phased into the program?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think there's a couple of different approaches that you could use to address that interest, and we've certainly heard that interest expressed on a variety of occasions. How can we build out local resources? How can we allow for those resources to become a part of the supply portfolio? And I think you can do it in one of two ways. The first approach would be maybe the simplest one, which would be to go out to the wholesale markets and kind of get your short-term supply in order from existing resources, and then you could go out with like a second solicitation that would be more exclusively focused on new generating resources, and you could focus that entirely on local resources, or you could have a broader solicitation that, say, would provide evaluative preference to local resources, but might also consider resources that are outside the Tri-County area. So I think there are a number of ways you can do that. In terms of utility scale procurement, you can also look at programs, and I think this is one of the programs that will likely be contemplated by this agency going forward, and that would be a feed-in tariff program. That's been pretty effective. It's been a little slow to build in terms of momentum within the Marin Clean Energy service territory, but over time they've had a really nice response to this feed-in tariff program, which is more specifically designed to accommodate smaller scale renewable energy infrastructure within the MCE service territory. And you could certainly do something similar here. So I think there are a variety of mechanisms that could be applied, and the timing is really entirely up to you. And of course, you know, you did mention the lead time. So to the extent you roll those things out sooner rather than later, you could accommodate projects that are already being considered.
I just want to add, I think that is a great question, and it does take some time to get those local projects up and running. And so, you know, the approach or the strategy in regards to that initial procurement would really be, you know, you look at the load requirements, your expected requirements of the customers for the program, and then, you know, buy, 100% or near 100% of that requirement, so let's say a year out, but then 2-3 years out, you maybe only buy like 50% so that you leave room in the portfolio for those new projects to come in. So that's a typical strategy that's used.
In terms of the service options that you've outlined in the implementation plan, how much flexibility is there for the policy board and for this board to change those options in the future? I know you kind of provided a broad outline, but I'm assuming we're going to get much more specific in terms of what the service options are and how much flexibility is there to change those options that will be available to the customers.
Yeah, I think from a legal perspective, there is flexibility to the extent that you attend to the various statutory requirements that pertain to renewable energy procurement. You're probably aware that we've got a escalating renewable portfolio standard or renewable purchase requirement, if you will, here in the state of California, and that's going to, the current trajectory is up to 50% by 2030, and there are, of course, many discussions in the legislature about how they might change over time and increase to 100% or some other level above 50. And so that is kind of a baseline requirement in terms of procurement with regard to your resource mix. Beyond that, you really have unbridled flexibility as to how you choose to mix renewable energy and various other sources in delivering a cost-effective product to your customers. So, I think that's something to keep in mind. And the other piece to keep in mind, of course, is that, to the extent that you come out with a particular default service option at the time that you commence service, oftentimes there's an expectation within your customer group that, you really won't fall below that particular renewable threshold or GHG-free threshold over time. And so it's just, I think that's an important consideration, is where you set the bar initially and where that goes over time. And are you on an upward trajectory, flat, or downward? And what message does that send to the customer, and how is that received? So those are things to think about.
Microphone is on. The first is at the front end, I think there's just some cleanup that's needed in terms of who's the member agencies. There's reference to all the members, all the cities within the Tri-County regions are members, which is not the case. And then in other places, I think it talks about 16 or 18 cities being members. So since you alluded to the fact that would have to go back to the CPUC once we get the membership, let's make sure that that's correct. Second one is, and this is probably trivial, but we talk about MBCP forming in 2013, which is when the sort of the partnership formed, which it happens to be the same acronym that we actually called the JPA, which formed in 2017. I was a little confused when I read that first page with that, so I thought maybe potentially some cleanup just to clarify that point was in order. Getting into more substantive questions, I wanted to ask about, there is a mention, but relatively little about energy storage in this document, and I'm wondering if, not to say that it's going to be something we're going to do, but if it's something that referencing innovative energy storage options could be something that this entity could pursue, it would be warranted to be mentioned more detail, or at least just bulleted out as sort of a placeholder should that opportunity arise, if that's warranted, or if we're good the way we are. So that's one key question.
Yeah, and I think that's a good one, and we can certainly make a comment in the document about the requirements that will pertain to MBCP in terms of energy storage. As a new load-serving entity, you will have an energy storage procurement requirement, and so I think we want to maybe spec that out as something that you intend to comply with, and then maybe speak more generally about how you might investigate other options and opportunities beyond that requirement, if that would meet your needs.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I mean,
Okay.
I think in chapter 6, there was talking about all sorts of different ways we can invest our money.
Okay.
Energy storage wasn't mentioned. I think it was mentioned in the financial plan in one bullet point, and I thought potentially at least just more flexibility.
Let me just quickly help Kirby on this one. I think everything in the implementation plan is just plain basics. When we get together next month or the month after, we will be addressing the issue of what kind of resources we want to buy, what kind of commitments do we want to have for energy storage, which I can assure you it's not likely that I will recommend anything to this board or to the policy board in terms of renewable resource that doesn't have storage to go with it, given the impact that some of these renewable resources are having now on the operation of the grid.
Second question was about On page 28, there's a little bit of three short bullets at the end about net revenues in the first few years of the operation will provide for operating and rate stabilization reserves, rebates, and cash rebates. Again, just a question about flexibility. Are there any more bullets that would be warranted there to provide us more flexibility in those first few years of operation about what net revenues could be used? I'm not prescribing that. I'm just asking that question, if there's enough flexibility in this document with those bullets, or if more flexibility might make sense.
I thought that the bullets are quite flexible. It didn't specify how much will go into reserves versus how much we want to give for programs or cash rebates. That's the item that we're going to be talking about next.
And then lastly, as we saw the phase, this is the first time we've seen the phase-in strategy. Not necessarily questioning it, just maybe a little bit more about the logic behind the sort of the two phases and what went into the thinking behind developing the two different phases for the different customer phase-in periods.
I'll address that because I know that I've sort of changed it. April, which was the initial first phase that you've seen in the past, is also the same date that the city of San Jose, the East Bay Community Power is also coming on April 1st. And I believe that the third party also in California, maybe City of Los Angeles. So all those folks are going to be going into the market on the same day, most likely using the same data manager and overwhelming the system and overwhelming PG&E and Southern California Edison. Not to mention that all of them are likely to be going out for requests for doing an RFP for supply resources and all tap in the market all at the same time. Pretty much that's going to push the price up. So I thought that we probably, to the extent that you folks are agreeable to some of the proposals that I'm going to be making to you later on, we should be able to move that date forward. Actually, I wanted to move it to February 1st, but I got enough caution from PA folks that I figured, okay, maybe March timeframe would be a better time to start. But that will get us ahead of the pack, so to speak, into the market and hopefully help us secure some low-cost energy.
Thank you.
And just a couple more points on the phase-in. I think, starting with the non-residential, there's a couple of advantages to that. One is just it's a smaller number of accounts, so from a customer service perspective, the call center, a little bit easier to start that way. The other is related to the cash flows. The rates that the non-residential customers pay are generally seasonal, so that in there's by PG&E standards, their rates, assuming we're going to follow a similar rate structure, there are 6 summer months and 6 winter or non-summer months. And the summer period starts in May, and so for commercial rates, they're quite a bit higher in those summer months, and it generates more positive cash flow for the program. So by starting with the commercial, leading into that summer period, it just gets the program off on a very strong financial footing, and then the residential customers coming in later, less relevant when they come in terms of the cash flows, because for the most part, the rate is just the same across the year. It's not a seasonal rate. So there is a little bit of thinking behind the phase-in composition, just through trying to minimize the need for capital to start the program.
All right, public comment?
Morning. My name is Seth Caper, and I'm with the Aromas Progressive Action League. I'm one of the citizens groups that work with Romero Institute to help get JPA passed, and we're still working together and look forward to working together with you on moving this forward. We're excited about getting things started. The implementation plan, as John and Kirby mentioned, is a very general document. It's a very flexible document. That seems totally appropriate, so you're not tying your hands in the future. And just wanted to comment that moving forward from the very get-go, we're hoping that there's a few priorities that you'll keep in mind in how you make decisions within that flexibility. One of them would be around trying to prioritize early measures that you can take to move to renewables. in the early phases, before you have accumulated capital for actually doing construction of new generation facilities, to look at the way you structure your feed-in tariffs and your net metering rules that will encourage private individuals and companies in the area to take advantage of the programs you adopt to incentivize them to move toward renewables earlier. We'd also encourage you to put a priority on moving toward developing in-house staff to do as much of the necessary management and operation of the JPA. That will bring jobs to the area by keeping those functions local, and it'll also, we believe it'll increase your local control to have actual staff working for the board to do that work. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, board members, or good morning. I'm Patrick Matthews, General Manager with Salinas Valley Solid Waste Authority, and I just want to thank Dr. Baumann for his question and comments. Representing the solid waste agencies in in Monterey County, I just want to say that we're very excited about the opportunity for the support of local build-out of renewables. As you know, our solid waste industry is moving more and more towards renewable energy production. Our agency in particular has 2 almost shovel-ready projects that we have been holding off on for the last year in anticipation of some future procurement opportunity through Monterey Bay Community Power. So again, we want to encourage you to take that question up as you start looking at your procurement policies. Again, we have projects that could be potential feed-ins for the agency that could be operational within 1 to 2 years, and other medium to small scale projects that could work within the 2 to 4 year period. And we definitely support the 2 recommendations from your consultant on how to establish those procurement policies to support local build out of renewables. And thank you for your work.
Thank you, John Martinez from Gonzales. It's the opportunity for me to express a few ideas that the people have been talking about down in South County. As you know, we have a great growth in greenhouses, developing greenhouses. The marijuana industry is coming in, and they're really zapping the place, right? So they have a lot of energy they're using up, and this will be an opportunity to keep that agenda open. When it comes to that, I've been speaking with a lot of them who've been asking me, particularly as to how they can access renewable resources in terms of develop their solar capabilities to be able to grow their market. So there's a lot of them out there. I mean, I'm talking hundreds. So everybody wants to do this. So there's a whole new market aside from the existing nonprofits that are out there, like churches, schools, hospitals, and that sort of thing. So that helps a lot in that sense. The other, of course, would be other nonprofit groups. And I'm thinking about one in particular that it would help promote renewable energy, and that would be the American GI Forum. The American GI Forum. The American GI Forum represents veterans, and it was created when the Americans came back from World War II and were not able to be buried in white-only cemeteries. So it was created for everybody of color. And that one individual that was not allowed to be buried there was buried at Arlington in honor of that effort to create this burial opportunity nationwide. So the GI Forum was formed, and here we have all these GIs go off to war. And as you all know your history, the last 2 wars, or since World War II, we kept the Germans from the oil, gas. We kept the Japanese from getting it, and eventually we starved them out. We bombed their food and everything else. We had our Bracero program, and we had all the energy that we wanted here, so we could feed our armed forces with food and energy. So we did that, and we won. Since that, our fathers, our grandfathers have all kept us, up to speed. This is important, energy is important. We've been fighting wars ever since, just to make sure that America is as powerful as it is, and be able to promote democracy worldwide. In that effort, a lot of these GIs come back, and sadly, they come back injured in many ways, if they come back alive at all. And we're talking to the extent of Gold Star mothers and fathers and families that lose their precious ones that volunteered for the services. And sadly, when the veterans come back, the first thing that's asked of them is to pay for their PG&E bill. And, you know, it's kind of ironic. You know, they go out and fight for oil and energy and gas, and they come back with, missing parts if they come back at all alive. And they're billed PG&E. I mean, the energy, it's kind of like insulting, but again, I try to qualify it by saying our parents brought us into that line of thinking that that's okay. Because of energy, because of gas, we are the most powerful country in the world, and we're keeping other nations from it in order to maintain our power. And I think we have an opportunity here with the solar industry to be able to provide solar energy to those veterans who come back disabled and cannot afford to pay their PG&E and cannot afford to feed their families and cannot afford to send their kids to school. An extra $200 in their pocket in reduction of energy in their homes to refrigerate their food and heat their homes is vital to those folks. They gave everything. So why not give back some solar panels to those folks or some type of discount where they can have energy? And I think that's another thing. The third one I wanted to express is the possibility of, or actually two others. I'll make them real quick though, because I know I'm getting lengthy here. The other is that we had an issue in Gonzales, incinerator that was going to be brought in to incinerate our local garbage. And I know that's an issue that all the municipalities have. And I believe that if we were to concentrate our solar panels and renewable energy resources into one location, try to locate them where we have this type of energy. We have the dump sites, we have garbage, and thank you. The other would be new developments. East Salinas, as you guys would know, East Salinas is going to be developing towards Old Stage Road. Thousands and thousands of houses are going to be brought in there. And that's in the next 10, 20 years. It's in the development of this now. It's been approved 10 years ago. So it's in the development now. And there's a lot of possibility that we could require new developments to have the ability to switch over to solar. And it's some incentive that they're required to do that. I think would be a great message to come up for future development, future homes, future businesses. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Comments? Back to the board for any final comments? Okay, this is an item for discussion only. We will move to the next item on the agenda, which is the staff report regarding recommended approach to retail rate design.
This item is going to be brought.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and present it. I'm just trying to find it in this binder. I'm getting there.
I have a point of order. So does this item, the implementation plan, is the next stop for at the policy board?
Next up is the policy board, I believe on August 16th.
So this board won't be making a recommendation to the policy board about the implementation plan?
That is correct. Yeah, it's going for approval. I think initially we thought about doing it that way, the way you were thinking, and I think the advice that we got from our attorney is that, no, this should be here for discussion, eventually for approval at the policy board.
As governed by the JPA agreement.
Okay, yeah, I was imagining a recommendation from this body, but maybe the minutes can just be conveyed on to show the policy board the review that this board.
When we write the staff report for the policy board, I'll make sure that to let them know that we have discussed it with you and that we have received your approval, or you seem to be comfortable with it, and also we'll make sure that we implement the changes that you have recommended, make sure that a couple of tweaks that needs to be taken care of to describe the agency are done correctly. In general, if we distill what we do down to the essence, really we buy wholesale electricity and sell it retail. In that 4 or 5 words, there's a lot of actions that need to be taken, a lot of decisions that we need to make together. For example, buying resources. What kind of resources do we want to buy? How much renewable versus how much carbon-free? What's the difference between the two? Do we want to buy all the resources at the same time? Do we stagger it? What kind of technologies do we want to get into? How many suppliers do we work with? Do we have the suppliers also handle the scheduling coordination or get an independent scheduling coordinator? These are all decisions that we're going to have to go through one by one, working with you folks on it, being the operation board, and eventually come to a decision on how we want to move forward. Also, at the other end, when it comes to making our rates or dealing with the retail side, what kind of rates do we want to charge? How many offers do we want to make out there? What kind of programs do we want to put together? And the biggest decision of all is how to schedule or how to structure your rates relative to that of the competing entity, in this case, Pacific Gas and Electric. Now, in the past, all utilities really done rates exactly the same way, and they've been doing it that way for the last 100 years. They calculate the cost to serve the customer. They allocate that cost among the customer classes, the various customer classes. Not exactly in a scientific way, but there's a lot of art that goes into it. Then eventually, from that allocation, they distill it down to a rate per class. Sometimes it's per kilowatt hour, sometimes per kilowatt hour and kilowatt. Some of it is fixed to handle the metering and whatnot. Others will handle energy efficiency and a variety of other things. So that's how utility has done their business, year in and year out. For us, being a new entity, trying to get into the business and only handling one piece of the pie, the generation end, we took a different approach. CCEs took a different approach. The early ones have designed rates to make sure that the shape of them, the construct of them, will be very roughly pretty much like PG&E or like Southern California Edison if they done in Southern California. But they probably charged different rates. So the rates will be lower than PG&E for some customer classes, maybe a lot lower for other customer classes, depending on how they wanted to allocate the cost. So they calculated cost of service study, they allocated the cost, and they pretty much came up with rates that were a tad down from PG&E if they could help it. And that pretty much what Marin did and what I believe also Sonoma did. Now, unrelated or maybe related is the opt-out rates, which roughly is somewhere between 12 to 15%, if I remember correctly. For Peninsula and Silicon Valley Clean Energy, we took a different approach. We basically said we're going to we're not going to make any cost of service. We're not going to do any of this stuff. Already our customers have spent plenty of money through PG&E to come up with this very cumbersome study about cost of service. So we're going to take PG&E's rates as they are, the way they are, all of them with no exception, and discount them. Peninsula decided to discount those rates by 5%. We discounted it by 1%. Now, I mention here to be just very clear that when I say discounted by 1%, that's inclusive of the PCIA. In other words, the way we calculated the rates is we got PG&E's rates multiplied by 0.99, and that number we subtracted from it the PCIA, and the result is the rate that we charged. And that's the same thing for all the other CCEs. And that's the approach that we took for both Peninsula as well as Silicon Valley Clean Energy. I'm recommending to you that we take on a new approach. It's a little different, not too far from what the others have done, but it's just a little different. I'm suggesting to you that we basically be at parity with PG&E's rates. Rate for rate, they jack it up a little, we go up. They bring it down a little, we bring it down. We just pair the rates, which will make it very easy as far as calculating any adjustments that we need to make. And instead of having that be a tedious process whereby we have to do it ourselves, pass it on to a consultant who in turn will code it into their system and use that in order to calculate the charges. I'm suggesting that we figure out a way just to go straight with whatever PG&E is doing. Again, keep in mind that whatever rate that is, we'll subtract from that the PCIA, and that will be the rate that we actually will be charging. This way, we would never be above PG&E. And the obvious question to you will be, well, so why are we doing this? Yeah, if we don't have some advantage on the retail side, rates-wise from PG&E, why bother? And the reasons that I have are actually three of them. Well, there's four that because we're going to end up with net surplus. That I guarantee you. One is we need to accumulate some reserves early on so we can go develop some resources in Monterey and in Santa Cruz and in San Benito or wherever we can find a land. So that's the obvious one. We need to cash some money and put it aside for future use. Two is we want to offer programs that are custom tailored to our customers. Specific custom tailored programs that don't just take into account all the type of programs that PG&E offers. Obviously, we want to buy greener resources. So we're going to use some of that extra money in order to buy greener resources. Hopefully, we can go all the way to 100% carbon free, and I think we can. Four, which I think is the most important part that I'm sure plenty of the folks here will be looking forward to hear, which is what kind of discount you're going to give me from that of PG&E's. And I suggest to you that one way to do this, which I think would work and would work well, is to offer either a rebate or a dividend or credits or however you want to call it at the end of the year. So you announce it in the beginning of the fiscal year, you look at your numbers, you know you're going to put some in reserves, you know you're going to put some in programs, then you look at what's left and you basically say, whatever that's left, I'm going to give that back to the customers at the end of the year as a rebate or dividends for the loyalty for staying with us. Now I can tell you that I'm doing the same thing next week, and I'm making roughly a similar presentation to the board at Silicon Valley Clean Energy that basically suggests the same thing. It's not going to suggest parity with PG&E's rates. That train has left, and we are 1% below PG&E. I can't change that over there, but I can do whatever here if you guys would allow me to do it. So by taking that approach over there, I can tell you roughly what some of the numbers look like, and it looks like we're going to be able to rebate somewhere on the average over the next 5 years about 6%. And if you announce that in the beginning of the year, you're almost guaranteed you're going to have your customer looking forward to it and want to stay with you for the entire year so they can get that rebate at the end of the year. Certainly the customers, especially if we have the proper fiscal year arrangement and that rebate is provided sometime around the end of November or beginning of December, that probably will be really welcomed by the customer. For the commercial, of course, it will be welcomed if you can spread it out through the year, maybe on a quarterly basis or maybe twice a year. It's just I think, an idea that I believe will keep all the customers in working with the agency instead of having some of them doubt whether that 1% or the 2% the break that you are giving them is just a bait and switch, since they don't know exactly what's going to happen at the end of the year, whether you're going to have leftover money or what you're going to do with that money if you have it. If there's a way for us to be able to announce that in the beginning of the year, I think that would be something that customers would welcome. And I'll stop here, take your comments and questions.
I guess the one concern I would have, I understand your strategy of trying to build reserves up, and it gives you additional flexibility, and then using the rebate as a way to build customer loyalty. The concern I would have is that when we first launched this enterprise, and if we're announcing that we're basically at parity with PG&E, will some people, will there be more of an opt-out? How will it affect the opt-out, opt-in? Because I think when you announce that we're 1% or 2% below PG&E, there's an incentive for people wanting to stay in community power as opposed to opting out. So how do you analyze that issue?
Two answers actually. First, when we announced that we're going to be launching and our rates are going to be identical to that of PG&E, we better at the same time announce that there's expectation that at the end of the first year, there will be a rebate of certain percent given back to the customers that will continue with us and won't opt out. So that will give them the discount that they will be looking for. Second, which I think probably equally important, when we asked the people that opted out in Silicon Valley Clean Energy why they opted out, the super majority of them basically said because they really don't want to be told that they're going to be served by somebody else without them saying so. It had nothing to do with the fact that they already being served by a monopoly to begin with, and now they have a choice. That didn't matter. None of that stuff matters. Just the fact that they got switched without them saying so irked them. And some didn't like governments in general or anything that government provide, and that's why they opted out. None of them said we're opting out because your discount is too low, or there were a few that said we think this 1% that you're giving us is a bait and switch, and you guys at the end of the year you're going to jack up the rates to make up for for what you didn't make during this year.
So this is kind of the Costco REI model, the co-op model.
Precisely. Yeah, and I'm a member of REI, and I do love the $200 rebate that I get at the end of the year.
And you mentioned PG&E provides a number of programs, energy rebates. I guess they used to have when you bought an energy efficient washer or dryer or refrigerator. So will those stay in place, or how do those programs translate to the new Monterey Bay Community Power?
The energy efficiency programs, all of which are funded by money that PG&E collects from you on monthly basis. It's called public benefit charge. And that public benefit charge goes to cover energy efficiency programs, low-income subsidy programs, R&D programs. And that charge will continue to be collected exactly the way it's being collected now by PG&E, and PG&E will continue to offer all these programs to all of our customers in Monterey and Santa Cruz and San Benito.
So if we took this strategy and we set our rates exactly the same as PG&E in the first year, we had offered a rebate, and in subsequent years continued to be able to offer the rebate, how much flexibility would we have then at some point to come back and say, okay, moving forward, we're going to offer it at, say, 2.5% less than PG&E? How much does this tie our hands with this initial decision for rate setting down the road?
It doesn't at all. It doesn't. I'm not specifying what the discount should be or what the rebate should be. That should be announced when we put the budget together for the coming year. So we'll be able to announce how much money we want to spend on programs, how much money is going to be put in reserves, and how much money eventually will be left over to rebate the customers. Let me give you an example for what I know will be recommended to a different board next week. We've put together the budget for next year, which goes from October to September, and eventually concluded that we would like to put 2% of the total revenue towards programs, and of the money that will be left over, we would like to put 90% into reserves and 10% to be given back as rebates, and that 10% that will be given back as rebates amount to about 5% discount. And that will change from year to year based on, once you set up your budget, you find out how much money you spend on programs, how much money you want to put in reserves. Eventually, the amount of money in reserves will reach your desired target. And once that happens, then probably more money will be put into programs and more money will be put into rebates.
So is there enough time to test this with customer surveys, the rate proposals?
I don't know. I would have to ask the people that do surveys whether they will have enough time to do this. I'll be honest with you, I can't tell. And I know that in the next few months, sometime between now and March, we may not go back and check with our citizens on every decision that we need to make. We may not be able to do that if we want to actually launch in March, but to the best extent that we can, I'm more than happy to do it.
Okay. So do we need a motion to approve this rate strategy?
Hang on, we've still got some questions.
Okay.
No, PG&E's, that's the whole idea behind the PCIA, the Public Adjustment Indifference Charge. Basically what PG&E is saying is, I had a certain amount of generation that I was going to sell you here in Monterey and Santa Cruz and so on. Now I have to sell that in the market, in a short-term market, and there's a difference between what I bought it for and what I was going to collect from you and what I was going to sell it at the market for, and you're responsible for paying me the difference. They don't make any money, they don't make any return on the generation side. All the return that they make for their shareholders is on the distribution side. So that's why it's called indifference charge, because they are indifferent to the fact that all of our customers now left their territory. We kept their customers are staying with them whole, so to speak. They don't lose any money, they don't pay any more money, their rates don't go up.
Thank you. And did you consider also a plan that would do both a 1% reduction and a dividend at the end of the year?
That's what we're trying to do at Silicon Valley Clean Energy, and it's doable. The only thing that does happen if you do it that way, generally you would need to apply to a different structure, the different service agreement with PG&E. They offer two services. Once we get our certificate from CPUC, we need to go and sign a service agreement with PG&E that basically say this is how our relationship is going to be governed. You're going to go read the meters, and you're going to tell us what the customer consumption is. We have rates over here that we left with some data manager. He's going to multiply A by B, ship it back to you, then you ship it to the customer, you collect the money, you put it into our bank. That service agreement is just going to define how the relationship is going to work. And they have it working both ways. One that's called rate ready, another one is called bill ready. The bill ready is they just give us the information, we multiply by the rates that we have to develop, then ship it back to them, and then they bill and send us the money. The rate ready, we just send them the rates. Say, here's the rates, use that, use your systems, figure out what's due us, collect the money from the customer and send it to us, which bypasses the data manager expense that could be probably $1 million+. If we do the 1% below, then probably we won't be able to do the rate ready as well. I would much rather just, and also there are adjustments that PG&E does throughout the year, tweaks, very little tweaks that they do. If we do the rate ready and take the approach of some discount from PG&E, it takes a while for us to kind of code all the programs in order to make sure that we are staying at 1% below PG&E and have to ship that back to them, and it takes probably maybe somewhere between 2 to 6 weeks to make the proper adjustments so we can follow the rates along.
I'm probably oversimplifying the effort, but
And
it seems to me it's just minus 1%, whatever the bill is.
Yeah, I thought it should be that simple.
But it's not.
As it turned out, it's about, $4 million endeavor for us.
That's crazy.
At Silicon Valley Clean Energy. It will be similar to this agency because because the way because pretty much the load that we have here is similar to the load that we have at Silicon Valley Clean Energy. It's very similar, demand-wise. But again, if you can plug that 1% into the rebate, in my mind, that will make things a lot cleaner for us.
Tom, just a quick question. I'm assuming that the initial opt-out when a program begins is higher than later on through the organization as it builds up. So I'm making that assumption. Is that correct?
You're right, it is, and it's I hate to say it, it's an incorrect one. It's usually the other way around. The opt-out initially is small, then as people begin to get the service and they hear from their neighbors that opted out, why they opted out, then you probably get a few people trickling in after the fact.
So how are you all going to look at an aggressive marketing plan initially and then throughout the course to maintain that customer base?
The aggressive marketing really is going to be marketing the programs that we will put together eventually that will differentiate us from Pacific Gas and Electric. I made that suggestion, and eventually the board that I'm working with now did agree to it, and they found it to be sound. That really the approach to take is when it comes to marketing, is to go hard, then soft, then hard again. Hard is just to get the bodies, the governing bodies, to say yes, we want to do this. We want to form the Joint Action Agency. And there were plenty of work and a lot of hard work that was put in by a lot of people in order to get this agency together. That was a lot of hard work, a lot of marketing. Excellent effort. Now from here until actual roll-in of customers, I want to go soft because quite frankly, what we will be saying to customers time and time again over the next 9 months is don't do anything. You're going to get some sort of a piece of paper that says, here's the right that you have, you can opt out if you want. Toss it in the garbage, don't do anything. Because they automatically become our customers. I don't need to try to lure them in. They're already in. And if the surveys that I've read over the years are correct, the average citizen, maybe not in California, but in the United States, spends about 10 minutes a year thinking about their electricity. People, you are interested, but most people are not. And most likely, we will be in operation for 20 to 25 years, and people will still think that we are part of PG&E. And I'm telling you this because I've served 2 municipal organizations, and I had people calling wanting to talk to the PG&E representative, and actually one of them was somebody that was applying for a job. So neutrality is we don't really need to go out with a huge marketing approach in the next few months. I suggest to you that we go with a very soft approach. Just be in the community, be in the art and wine festivals, be in every chance that we get. Just be out there telling people who we are. I wouldn't suggest that we go all out with radio and television ads and things of that nature. I think that probably may not be a better way of using our money.
So, just completed a really significant energy retrofit project in the city of Salinas, and one of the things that we learned is that over the course of time, PG&E goes up about 5%, 5.6 between somewhere a year annually, we were, by accepting terms on financing that took it only to 4%, we were able to leverage a significant amount of funding for projects and everything else. I think I understand that the rebate would serve the purpose of reducing the increase. So if Community Bay Power pushed it up 5% a year, let's use that number, 5% a year, but the rebate came back that would serve as a reduction to that. And I bring this up because the city of Salinas, we're your top 3 customer base there, reduced rates are simply the most important thing in this entire process for us. The ability to, that average income of under $40,000 a year, anything you save. And it may be that, I'm trying to understand whether it's important to understand a more immediate month-by-month decrease versus a rebate over the course of time as people look at those bills and pay for it, because we still have to demonstrate the value of this proposition. So I'm just curious about how that all works. And
I was going to say that I think you made a point earlier. You said that this agency is going to raise the rates. It's not. I'm recommending that our generation rates will be exactly a parity with PG&E, so it won't go anywhere beyond where PG&E is at. And by the way, PG&E's rates for the generation side have been going down for the last couple of years. I realize that when you look at your bill, you see the entire bill, distribution charges, public goods, everything all together. But what PG&E has been doing cleverly, they've been beefing up the distribution and transmission charges and reducing the generation charges. Doesn't help us a whole lot because it kind of squeezes us because we are only playing in the generation side, we're not playing in the distribution side. So don't expect that our rates will be going up 5%. PG&E's rates on the distribution side will be going up 10% probably, but we can't do anything about that, and we'll continue to go up that way for all of you, because we don't do the distribution side, we're only doing generation. Now, as it relates to whether you should give that discount on a month-by-month basis or on annual basis, I can tell you that at least from experience, that on the generation side, again, a 1% discount does not amount to a cup of coffee a month. And I'm not talking fancy coffee, I'm talking just a plain cup of coffee. And people don't feel it, and they don't get it. And but if you just hold on to it, if you got 5% at the end of the year, that amounts to 60% of one bill. So that's real money, and it does probably garner more support and more loyalty from the customers.
Would it come back in a check, or would it be a discount on the last bill?
I'd be honest with you, we're going to work these details out. Most likely it will be a credit on the bill.
Okay.
Could you talk briefly about the surveying you did and how many folks were surveyed, and any demographic information you could conclude how that might compare to a city like Salinas? Because we understand the concerns about ratepayers, being squeezed by the housing market currently. Yeah.
I don't know if Bill and company have done any surveying in this area, or Bill, we haven't done any. We've done only one survey for Silicon Valley Clean Energy, or just to kind of get a sense of where folks are at. They didn't make any difference to them whether you go 1% or 2% or you have to go probably 20% to get them to say for sure I'll be with you. But anything smaller than that, or anything in the single digit, really didn't sway in one way or another. But then again, we have customers, by the way, in Silicon Valley that range anywhere from the very expensive places like Los Altos Hills down to folks in the southern end of the county in Gilroy, and they all range of income level. We've tried to pretty much market all of them and do specific programs for those customers. We have now a couple of programs that we're looking at that will target only people that live in mobile homes, for example. We will do the same thing here. I guarantee you I will look at the entire customer folks that we have and work with each and every one of them to find something that will make sense for each customer class.
Salinas did conduct a survey, and we'd be happy to share those results if directed.
Thank you.
Other questions here? I think we'll go to public comment here just in one moment. I just want to, again, this is a discussion item. I'm assuming that would work as the previous item, that this would come to the policy, to the board on the 16th for approval, or I'm just trying to understand how that works before Jamie jumps in here.
Yeah, I'm going to ask the same question because it doesn't make any sense to me that the operations board is not ranking a recommendation to the policy board. It makes no sense to me.
Forgive me, and it's probably, I'll take the blame for it. I'm not used to two different boards. I was trying to get used to one board, so now I have to get used to two. And I'm going to have to go back and read the JPA carefully to make sure that where the distinctions of the responsibilities are. I have, at least for this meeting, thought of the operation board to, in effect, be the executive committee of the policy board. Basically, you are the ones to get in depth a little bit into some of the suggestions that we are recommending. I'm going to have to go back and revise that because I obviously need to be careful as to what's in your purview to approve and what's in the policy board to approve, and working with my attorney over here, I'll do whatever it takes to stay out of jail.
Yeah.
That's good.
So the JPA agreement may specifically comment on it, or it may not specifically comment on it. It doesn't prevent your board from making a recommendation. It was simply agendized as a discussion item. If somebody wanted to have it agendized differently, someone could make that comment to the chair, then the chair could direct staff to place something on the agenda for it to be agendized in a different manner. The fact that you're being presented with information today and being asked to comment or ask questions shouldn't be taken as a lead that you don't have any authority or that the policy board isn't interested in your input on the matter.
Add one more thing, if you allow me. The staff report does mention that I'm making a recommendation, and I made it with the understanding that you will be acting on it.
So, just to clarify, I'm not aware that anything under the Brown Act would prevent one of these members from making a motion to approve the recommendation and forward it on to the policy board. Is that correct?
I'm not aware of anything under the Brown Act either, but I mean, it wasn't noticed as an action item. It was noticed as a discussion item, so someone could argue that they may have wanted to come and speak if they thought that the board was going to be voting on something, and they chose to stay home because it wasn't noticed that way. So I don't think it's that cut and dried. That would be my comment on it.
Mr. Chair, I would make a recommendation that in future, if staff is making a recommendation to us, that we go ahead and then make that recommendation to the policy board as items come forward again.
I believe that was the intent of the structure in the earlier conversations.
Well, and I would say that I think I agree with that. The idea that we ought to be making a recommendation to the policy board with the understanding that it's just a recommendation, an advisory recommendation. Ultimate authority lies on policy matters such as the implementation plan, such as the rate setting, such as the budget with the policy board. So we're kind of like a planning commission recommending to the board. They can ignore our recommendation. They can do whatever they want. It's just, so even if we were to not approve something, they could still approve it. So it's an advisory recommendation recommendation, but I do agree that they will appreciate and want our recommendation. And so in the future, I agree that we ought to be making an advisory recommendation to the policy board.
We'll go ahead and open it to public comment. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Again, my name is Juan Martinez, John Martinez from Gonzales, California. And Tom, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
I took the liberty coming up to shake your hand personally because I wanted to welcome you to the Central Coast. You know, I in particular am in my personality. I make friends with people, then I tell them how I feel about it, and in hopes to establish a relationship that my comments aren't a negative kind of pushback, but my opinions. And oftentimes in politics, when someone says something, it's taken personal and gets ugly. Well, in this case, I don't want it to go that way, but I usually support good ideas, and I always comment on the bad ones. So I might be some people might call it political hack that way, but I'm not. I just want to assume that most of us up here are doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And if it's not, then, and from my point of view, I would give my opinion. But anyway, to get to the chase on this thing, Tom, you brought up some angles and ways you want to approach your job, and you did that without talking to the community, and that's one concern there. And I encourage you to do that. So that's why I reached out to you, because I want to be open to you about that. You did say at one point there was going to be 7% reduction. Then later on you said 5%. So I was concerned about that, and so I brought that up to you now. And 1% discount on the dollar is, if I pay $100 bill, 1% to me means $1, correct? I'm saving $1 for every $100 that I spend on PG&E or electricity locally. That's not good at all. And I know in the long run it makes a lot of money, right? But that's a lot of us coming together, and we're making millions. So but personally, me, I spend $45 a month. I don't get nothing back, right? So that's not good. When we encourage the public to support this project, it was with the intent to bring down the cost of our PG&E rate. That alone is going to get you the customers that are going to stick with you, because for your information, we did not just talk to the elected officials, 105 of them, maybe 110 elected officials. And if you look at the numbers of municipalities and the elected officials, average 5, it's over 105 people. So we spoke to them, and most of them agreed that they want to join up. This is a great thing. So we did that. But we took the time and effort to speak to the community. We went to churches, organizations, chambers of commerce, schools, elected officials everywhere to talk to them about this great idea, to create the momentum from the bottom up so that the cities will say yes. 19 of them said yes. That was incredible. Two of them are about to jump on once they get the idea what's going on here. But we did want to bring down the rate. That was number one. Jobs locally. Locally would be a place of wind and air. In my turf, South County, there's a lot of wind and air. I would personally give you a tour of South Monterey County, and I'll give you an idea of what the greenhouses are doing, the needs in the schools, and environmental sensitive areas that need to be given attention to.
Please wrap up
And
your
hopefully with this money, that'd be great. Thank you very much. I apologize for speaking over my time.
Good morning, board members. My name is Anthony Rocha, and I serve on the Salinas City's Library and Community Services Commission, and I worked alongside the Romero Institute and working inside the community to try and build up the momentum, like John Martinez said, for this program. And I have two concerns. When we were knocking, well, not knocking on doors, when we were going to the churches and collecting signatures and phone banking for 9 hours, one of the things we told the community was that there was going to be lower rates. Because a lot of the community, they're very apprehensive about changing from PG&E to something else. They don't like to go with things that they don't know too much about. But one thing that made them move from PG&E, or to at least sign our petition to get the community choice energy, was that they were going to have lower rates. And while maybe in Silicon Valley, where after 1 year they would get, reimbursements. Here in Salinas Valley, farm workers are seasonal workers, so they're moving all over the place. So that is not going to work here. And my second concern is this is not a marketing effort. This is a community education effort. So you have to look at how you're going to tell the community that, you're only going to save $1 a month if we do it that way, or over, a year, then you'll be reimbursed. And it's not going to happen through just a PG&E bill where they read it and say, read this long paragraph about the rebates and all that stuff. You have to have, like how we did, the community for the Romero Institute and the Community Choice Energy. You have to talk to the churches, you have to talk to the community forums, the chambers of commerce. And I agree, no television or radios, but maybe considering hiring students from local community colleges that are, going into marketing and have them work for you, and going out to the community, knocking on doors and talking to the residents and explaining to them why this program would work and why they should switch from PG&E over to this program. Because if it's just over bill, it's not going to work that way, because most people don't even, like you said, 10 minutes. They don't read their full entire bill, so they just throw it in the garbage if they see that, it's not going to work out that way and they're not going to save any money and they have to wait a whole entire year before they save any money. So that's something that I'd just like to recommend to this board and to a new director. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Horacio Mezquita, and I work with farm workers, and we have a lot of problems with PG&E and gas and water. People don't make that much money here. They just barely making enough money to eat and pay rent. They work all day, and they just barely making it to pay the bills. But even though they don't make that much money, they're willing to work with this agency in order to save the planet. So we need to have decent rates and also spread the word to all the communities that we are doing something good for the planet. And that's how you get everybody together. But if we try to just talking about money, many people are going to opt out. So I suggest that you spread the word to the community that we're doing something good for the planet and that we're trying to do something to lower the rates. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Other comments? All right, we'll go ahead and close public comment, and any final comments from the board?
I will just say that, to me, the really compelling piece here was the $4 million that our CEO mentioned, that if we were to go 1% less, which admittedly is a relatively small difference from PG&E, it potentially incurs a $4 million expenditure upon this JPA that we don't need to. And the notion of having a rebate at the end of the cycle, it's something we can evaluate on a year-to-year basis, and then the rates, again, we can evaluate on a year-to-year basis. I understand the basis for the recommendation, and I'm certainly comfortable with what staff is recommending.
Just one quick comment. We still have to find somebody to manage the data, and whether that to be PG&E or somebody else, we're probably going to spend definitely less than $4 million, but we're not going to completely cut all $4 million. We still going to have to spend some of it, but we're going to save some money.
I think what I heard that was important, and to our speakers as well, is the evaluation of segments of the population and programs to understand usage and to develop programs that meet distinct needs. And I think that's important. So thank you. That concludes our discussion.
Just one quick note from the clerk. When everyone finishes up here, if the 3 people who took your oaths, if you could stop by my desk and sign them on your way out. Thank you.
Good. And with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for your help. It's so much easier on the other side of this day. Thank you.
Yeah, did good, man. Nice job.